I didn't even like the coffee at Linden Street Cafe. It tasted thin, a little burnt at the edges. But I came anyway, most mornings at 7:30, because it opened early and the Wi-Fi never cut out. Same corner table, same chipped mug, same habit of scrolling through unsent messages in my drafts folder before starting work. Half-finished notes to my brother. An email I kept rewriting to my old boss. Nothing ever sent. That morning was no different until she walked in. She didn't rush the way most people did before work. She moved like she had already been awake for hours, her hair tied back loosely, a beige coat folded over one arm. Mid-40s, maybe older, the kind of face that wasn't trying to look younger. She paused at the counter, reading the chalkboard menu as if it might have changed overnight. Large Americano. Splash of oat milk, she said, voice low, even. The barista glanced at me. That's your order, right? I nodded, half smiling. Guess so. She looked over, the smallest lift of an eyebrow, and for some reason my stomach tightened. When her drink came up, she reached for the same chipped mug I usually got, noticed my hand already on it, and let out a quick laugh. A short breath through her nose, not a sound meant for anyone. Sorry, she said, pulling back. Habit. No problem. I slid the mug toward her and took the other one. My fingers brushed the rim where hers had almost been. We both stepped aside from the counter at the same time. She folded her napkin slowly, like she was thinking of something else, then set it under her cup. I realized I was staring at her hands. Neat, unpainted nails, a small scar across one knuckle, and looked away too late. She noticed, but didn't comment. Instead, she asked, "You're here a lot?" Most mornings. My voice sounded more like a question than an answer. She nodded once and found a seat by the window. I went back to my corner but kept catching her reflection in the glass. The way she checked her phone, typed a few words, then locked the screen without sending. I knew that motion. I'd just done it myself. When she left, she passed by my table, hesitated as though to say something, then only offered a polite smile. Her coat sleeve brushed the edge of my laptop. A faint smell of citrus lingered after she went out the door. I sat there longer than usual, coffee cooling in my hands, watching her disappear down Linden Street. I told myself it was just curiosity, just a stranger who liked her Americano the way I did. At 10:03 my phone buzzed. A text from my husband's boss, the woman I'd just seen. Thanks for covering for Daniel last week. I owe you a proper coffee. Tomorrow? I read it twice, 3 times, thumb hovering over the keyboard but not typing anything. The drafts folder on my phone was already full. This would make another. Outside, the traffic light changed, and she crossed the street without looking back. I told myself I went to her office because it was practical. She had offered coffee, and she was sorting out Daniel's transfer papers anyway. But as soon as I stepped inside her converted garage, shelves lined with binders, a faint hum of an old space heater, I knew it wasn't just paperwork drawing me there. She waved me toward a chair. It's a mess, sorry. I keep meaning to file these. Stacks of manila folders tilted like small buildings across her desk. A half-eaten granola bar sat on top of an expense ledger. It's fine, I said. I like mess. Makes me feel less guilty about my own place. She smiled without looking up, tugging her hair into a loose knot. That's generous of you. We both reached for the same folder. Our fingers brushed, light as static, but enough to make me pull back. She noticed. A quick glance, then she focused on the page again. Daniel used to come here all the time, she said softly. Back when he still worked late nights. I wasn't sure if she meant it as a confession. He never mentioned that, I said. She kept flipping pages. He liked to joke I was his second office. I guess I was. There was something in the way she said it. A trace of nostalgia, maybe regret. I wanted to ask if that meant what I thought it did, but instead I picked up a pen and started checking off boxes she'd left blank. We worked in silence for a while, the only sound the squeak of my chair and the scratch of her pen. A mug of tea steamed near her elbow. Without thinking, I moved it closer to her before it could spill on the forms. She looked at me and gave a small nod, gratitude or surprise. I couldn't tell. Do you always take care of people like that? She asked. I shrugged. Not really. I just notice things. She leaned back. Daniel said you were observant. Sees everything, says nothing. That's what he told me when you started at the firm. I felt heat rise in my face. I didn't know which part unsettled me more, that she and my husband had talked about me, or that she remembered the exact words. I tried to lighten it. Sounds like he was warning you. Maybe he was, she said, but she was smiling now, faint and crooked. Her eyes had the kind of tired warmth you don't see in people under 30. They stayed on me a heartbeat too long, then drifted to the window. Rain had started, thin lines running down the glass. We both listened to it for a moment. Do you ever feel, she said quietly, like you're in someone else's story? Like you're a guest, and you don't know the script? The question caught me off guard. All the time, I said. Especially lately. She laughed softly, but there wasn't much humor in it. Good. Then it's not just me. Something shifted then. Not dramatic, just a small rearrangement of air. I could almost hear the words I wasn't supposed to say. That she was Daniel's boss. That I was married. That she was 15, maybe 20 years older. All of it pressed against the inside of my mouth like steam. Instead, I said, "What happened to your hand?" and nodded at the scar across her knuckle. She glanced down, flexed her fingers. Cooking accident. Years ago. I still hold knives wrong. It was nothing, a simple detail, but it felt like a doorway she'd left ajar. I imagined her in a kitchen alone, bandaging herself without calling anyone. I imagined reaching for her hand, but didn't. She gathered the papers into a neat stack. That's enough for tonight, she said. Thank you for helping. When I stood to leave, she handed me my coat. Her fingers brushed the sleeve, a tiny pause before letting go, just long enough to make my chest tighten. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. Outside, the rain had turned heavier, but I didn't open my umbrella right away. My sleeve still held the faint scent of citrus from her hand that I started showing up later to the cafe. Not on purpose, at least not consciously. But 8:30 felt safer than 7:30. By then she'd usually be gone, and if she wasn't, it would look like coincidence. One morning she was still there anyway, sitting at my usual corner table. Her coat draped over the chair, steam curling from a mug. She glanced up when I came in, the tiniest flicker of something, surprise or relief, before her face went still again. You're late, she said. Not a question. Traffic, I lied. My voice caught on it. I ordered tea instead of coffee. A break in routine. When I sat across from her, the chair legs squeaked. She flinched at the sound. We both laughed at nothing. The silence after felt heavier. I didn't think you'd come, she said quietly. I shrugged, staring at my tea. Didn't think I would either. She toyed with a sugar packet she wasn't going to use, folding it in half, then again. Her eyes stayed on her hands. Daniel called me last night. He says you're restless. A pause. Are you? I almost answered. Almost told her everything about the apartment at night. The way the walls felt like paper, the unsent texts. But someone came through the door, a friend from work, waving. I waved back, a tight smile, as if nothing inside me was burning. When I turned back, she had straightened in her chair, mask back on. You should go, she murmured. You don't want people to misunderstand. I don't even know what I'd tell them, I said. That made her look at me. Just look. Her fingers stopped moving. For a moment, the cafe noise faded. Cups clinking, milk steamer hissing, and all I could see was the scar on her knuckle, the faint shimmer of rain still in her hair. She pushed her mug away. We shouldn't, she began, then stopped. Her throat worked once. It's complicated. I nodded. My own hands were trembling against the table's edge. I know. We sat there, neither of us moving, a thin stretch of air between us like glass. She reached for her coat. I reached at the same time to steady the chair. Our hands met, not a brush this time, but full palm against palm, warm and deliberate. Neither of us pulled back right away. Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to mine. I could hear my heartbeat, hard and uneven. I started, but the word stayed unfinished. She withdrew her hand slowly, leaving a faint print of heat on my skin. Outside, a siren passed, and the moment went with it. She asked if I could help carry some files from her office to her car. A simple errand. The kind of thing any coworker would do. Still, my pulse jumped as I followed her down the narrow hall and out the back door into the damp evening air. The parking lot was nearly empty. Streetlights flickered on one by one. A faint smell of rain on asphalt. She walked a little ahead, coat collar up, files hugged to her chest. I kept a respectful distance, but could see the outline of her shoulders trembling as if she were cold. "You don't have to do this," she said without turning around. "I know," I said. "I want to." We loaded the boxes into the trunk of her car. She smoothed the top folder as though it might calm her. Then she leaned against the bumper, arms crossed, eyes on some point beyond me. "You and Daniel," she said slowly. "You're okay?" It landed like a stone. "We're fine," I said too quickly. She gave a dry little laugh. "That sounded like a line you've rehearsed." I swallowed. "Maybe it is." She didn't press, just kept watching the empty lot. A bus hissed past on the street. She rubbed at the scar on her knuckle like it itched. "I used to think," she said, "that age gave you clarity. But it doesn't. It just gives you more ways to hide." Her voice thinned at the end. "I shouldn't be telling you this." I stepped closer, not close enough to touch. "You can." She finally looked at me. "I've been careful all my life. Careful with money, careful with people. And now I'm standing in a parking lot with you, and I don't even know what careful means anymore." The confession wasn't dramatic. It came out like a sigh that had been waiting years. It left a hollow in the air. I didn't know what to say. I kept seeing Daniel's face, the way he used to smile when he spoke about her, how competent she was, how she'd saved his job once. A thread of jealousy tugged at me, ugly and real. Had they ever been more than colleagues? Did it matter? My own marriage was already a shadow of itself. "I keep thinking," I said, "if I stand close enough, maybe I'll finally understand what I'm doing." My hands were in my pockets to keep from reaching for her. She tilted her head, studying me. "And do you?" "No," my throat felt raw. "All I know is this doesn't feel like paperwork anymore." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence stretched. A car door slammed somewhere far away. She pushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, eyes flicking to my mouth and back up. I felt the movement like a current. "I should go," she whispered. "I know." But neither of us moved. The street light above us buzzed, casting a halo over the trunk where our hands almost touched. She drew in a shaky breath. "Sometimes I wish you were older," she said, "or that I were braver." I stepped closer, only a foot between us now. "Sometimes I wish you'd stop wishing." Her eyes closed for a second, then opened again, glassy in the light. "You have no idea how dangerous this is." I almost said I do. I almost said everything. Instead, I just stood there, my heart hammering, a question forming at the back of my throat. She reached out, fingers hovering near my sleeve, then pulled back before touching. "Tell me," she said quietly, "what it is you really want from me." The question hung between us, bare and unfinished, like the first drop of rain before a storm that I didn't see her for almost a week. No texts, no emails except a single line about a missing signature on one of Daniel's forms. The cafe felt hollow without her. The chipped mug stayed on the shelf. I came late, left early. My drafts folder filled with messages I never sent, small check-ins, jokes about the weather, a question about the scar on her hand. All unsent. By Thursday, I caved and went to her office. The door was locked, blinds drawn. Through the narrow slit, I saw a second mug on her desk, not mine. A child's drawing taped to the filing cabinet that hadn't been there before. A figure of a woman with brown hair holding hands with a small boy. The crayon's son wore sunglasses. She opened the door before I knocked. "I'm on a call," she whispered, stepping out into the hallway. Her coat was on, hair pinned tight. She looked composed, almost formal. I started, but the words dissolved. I wasn't sure what I was asking for. "I can't," she said quickly. "Not now." Her eyes flicked toward the drawing, then back to me. "I have my grandson visiting. Things are different this week." Grandson. The word hit harder than I expected. I realized how little I knew about her life beyond this office, this town. I felt a stupid ache of jealousy at a child. "That's great," I said too brightly. "Family's important." She gave a small, polite smile. "The kind you give to a neighbor." "Yes, it is." We stood there, a hallway's worth of unspoken words between us. I wanted to ask if she was pulling away because of him, because of me, because of Daniel. But I couldn't. She squeezed my arm once, a gesture so brief it might not have happened, and went back inside, closing the door softly. That night, Daniel mentioned she'd been off at work. Maybe she's sick, he said, scrolling through his phone. She's always taken on too much. You know how she is. I nodded but didn't answer. The next day at the cafe, my usual table was empty, but a napkin sat folded on top. My name written in her careful handwriting. No note, just the name. I unfolded it. Nothing inside. Just a blank square. I sat there a long time, phone in my hand, thumb hovering over a message. I miss you. Another draft that wouldn't send. A man at the next table looked up, like he expected me to leave. I didn't. I stared at the blank napkin, wondering if it was meant as goodbye or as proof she'd been there at all. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. When the barista called my name, I didn't move. The coffee cooled on the counter, seat across from me still empty that I didn't plan to go to her house. I only meant to drop the signed papers in her mailbox and leave. But it was late, raining, and the light over her kitchen window was still on. Through the curtain, I could see her moving slowly, rinsing a mug, hair loose for once. She looked smaller without the office around her. I rang the bell before I could talk myself out of it. She opened the door wearing a faded sweatshirt, no makeup. Surprise flickered across her face, then a wary softness. You're soaked, she said. Come in before you catch something. Inside smelled of lemon cleaner and something baking. The counters were cluttered with school papers, toy cars, and an untouched casserole. She set a towel on the chair for me. My grandson's asleep. Keep your voice down. I sat at the table, dripping. She poured tea into 2 mismatched mugs, slid one across to me. Neither of us spoke for a while. The only sound was the hum of the fridge. You left a napkin at the cafe, I said finally. I know. She wrapped her hands around her mug. I didn't know what to write. That was an answer, I said. She winced a little, then looked at me directly. I can't keep whatever this is. Not with Daniel. Not with the child here. Not with the age gap. It's all wrong. I felt the words hit my chest, but I didn't flinch. Then why did you ask me to come for coffee? Why tell me about your scar? Why? Because you listen, she cut in. Her voice cracked on it. Because you look at me like I'm still a person. Not just a job title. Not just somebody's boss. She pressed a hand to her forehead. I haven't felt like that in years. I set my mug down. And what am I to you now? She gave a small, helpless laugh. A man too young, too married, and too kind. For a moment I thought that was the end. But she reached across the table, fingers trembling, and laid her hand over mine. Not like in a movie. More like someone steadying themselves on a railing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I turned my palm up, held her fingers lightly. I'm not here for an affair, I said. I'm here because you're the only person who's seen me lately. I didn't know how much I needed that. Her eyes filled. She didn't pull away. I keep thinking if I tell you everything it will ruin whatever's left. Then tell me, I said softly. She took a breath. Daniel and I. She stopped, shook her head. No, we never crossed that line. But he trusted me with everything. And I can't betray that. Even for this. I nodded. The tea had gone cold between us. I don't want to betray anyone either. We sat there, hands still touching on the table, the fridge humming, rain against the window. All the unsent messages, the paused moments, the almost words, collapsed into that silence. I'm scared, she said finally. It was almost a confession, almost a plea. Me too, I said. She gave a shaky smile. So what do we do? I squeezed her hand gently. Maybe nothing. Maybe just be honest. At least here. At least now. She let out a breath, a sound like surrender but softer. Okay. It wasn't a promise or a goodbye. Just a small, human word sitting between us like a fragile bridge. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve and managed another small smile. I smiled back. Okay. It's strange how quietly routines shift. By spring, I'd stopped timing my visits to the cafe. Some mornings I arrived at 8:47 without even trying, and she'd already be there by the window with her Americano, splash of oat milk. I ordered tea more often now, and she teased me for it, saying I was growing up backwards. We still sat at our usual table, still folded napkins into careful squares, but the tension that used to hum between us had thinned into something steadier, like a low current you barely notice until you miss it. Daniel knew by then that things weren't right between us. We ended our marriage quietly, papers signed without shouting. It hurt, but not the way I expected, more like setting down a heavy bag you've carried too long. She never tried to replace him, never asked for a declaration. We just kept showing up, morning after morning, two people learning how to occupy the same quiet without hiding. Sometimes we'd walk after coffee, down Linden Street, across the park, past the same bench where she once sat during a phone call she wouldn't explain. In April, she finally told me about her grandson, her late-night worries, the envelopes she'd been holding for clients long gone. In May, I told her about my drafts folder, the messages I never sent. We laughed at how alike we were in our silences. One evening, I cooked dinner at her place. She cut vegetables carefully, showing me the scar across her knuckle like an old joke. I dried the dishes. The kitchen smelled of lemon cleaner and thyme. She said it felt strange, letting someone else do small things for her. I said it felt right. We never made a speech about being together. It grew like moss, unnoticed at first, until one day it was there. She still had her office. I had a new job. Some nights I slept at her house, some nights at mine. We held hands on walks, but not at work. It was never dramatic, just earned. One rainy morning, she reached across the cafe table and straightened the napkin under my cup, a micro gesture she'd done since the first week. "You always spill," she murmured and smiled. I caught her hand before she could pull back. We sat like that, tea and black coffee steaming between us, watching the clock edge past 8:47. I thought of all the unfinished sentences we'd left over the months, the questions that once felt dangerous. They didn't feel dangerous anymore, just part of the language we'd built. Outside, the streetlight flickered, same as the first night in the parking lot. She glanced at me, eyes softer now, and said quietly, "We made it, didn't we?" I didn't answer right away, just squeezed her hand and let the silence fill in what words couldn't. The moment didn't need a label. It was already ours. Later, when we walked past the park bench, she stopped and sat. I sat beside her. She pulled a folded napkin from her pocket, blank except for a single small dot in the center. "Our secret punctuation mark," she said. "Only we would know what it meant." I tucked it into my coat. "We finished the sentence," I said. She leaned her head lightly on my shoulder, not for show, just because it fit. The city moved around us, buses hissing, rain on asphalt. Nothing perfect. Everything real.